Hello, everyone. Tim here from SpaceNetTV. Well, Bob Iger delivered Disney's quarterly earning call yesterday, and to be honest, it wasn't nearly as bad as everybody expected it to be, myself included. Uh, but it certainly was far from the win that Bob was trying to portray it as. As a former Disney executive, let me give you my thoughts on it. First, let's look at where the positives were. There was definitely better than expected profits. ESPN Plus led the way with its performance well exceeding what everybody thought it would. Advertising revenue was quite good, and it really saved the day really for Disney. Uh, there was also better than expected overseas parks performance. Disney parks as a whole in the domestic market have been down, but overseas they're doing quite well. The cost cutting savings from layoffs, breaking up of the DMED division, which is where I worked, um, definitely had an impact of saving several $1 billion in operating costs. And there was a much higher than expected demand for the Disney Cruise Line. And this is actually well deserved. The Disney cruises are fantastic. The ships are first rate. The cast members are spectacular. Yes, it is a premium price, but if you are a Disney fan and you enjoy cruising, it is by far the best value for your dollar, and it deserves to be performing well. The results of these unexpected profit margins was a result that the stock jumped a 6% jump, which is not insignificant. At the time of this recording, it's sitting just a little bit more than $90 a share, up from hovering around 80 for quite some time now. That's actually really good news. Will the jump in stock last? It's anybody's guess. There's still some things coming, and we'll talk about that here in a second. That could definitely push that price back down again. We'll see. What are the problem areas then? Disney Plus continues to be a failure financially, and honestly, it's a failure creatively too. Uh, been a decline in domestic park attendance. Why that is, no one's really quite sure, honestly, but there's just some thoughts on it, and we'll get into that. Ad revenue declined in all the linear networks, and that's partially an economy thing and partially other factors that we'll get into. Concerns about Wish underperforming. It has not tested well with test audiences, and may be another underwhelming performance from Disney Studios. There's a general apprehension about Inside Out sequel 2. Uh, the first trailer, I think, is probably dropped by the time I'm making this recording, and it's not looking like something that people are getting too excited about. The pending massive flop of the Marvels. I think we've all known for some time that the Marvels was going to be a disaster, and maybe the final nail in the coffin of the MCU. How bad a flop it's going to be terrible. If you look at the projections, it will be the weakest opener that there is for an MCU movie. Um, it probably will not get anywhere near breaking even. It will lose millions. And it's creatively a failure because it is virtually unwatchable. Bob also announced massive $2 billion more expansion and cost cutting and savings. Um, where that's going to come from, he really didn't specify. He did say there will be no more significant layoffs. What is significant or not, I don't know. We've already laid off 9,000. It was reported to be 7. It was closer to 9. And a massive purge of contractors that no one talks about, because a full third of the people who ran the and developed the streaming were contractors, which were jettisoned even before the layoffs. So there's a lot of technology people that have vacated the company for cost savings, and that may come back to bite them in the ass. So who's left to go? There's probably some more people that could be laid off out of the entertainment side. The parks will probably remain pretty stable in their personnel count. They're doing a great job, and for the most part, and There's some creatives that could go, and some selectively, if you pick the right ones to go, could actually really help performance in the long run. Bob had mentioned selling some of the linear broadcast properties. Uh, Really, there's only one that has any real value to it, and that's ABC. Now, Disney owns a number of other broadcast networks. Um, Nat Geo has some value to it. FX and FXX and FXXXXX. Honestly, they would probably go the way of Warner Brothers dumping the CW. Just please take this and take our debt with you. Would not be anything that would cause a massive savings from that perspective, and those networks will just probably hang around. He also talked about fewer productions and making a focus on quality over quantity. I'm not sure exactly how that slipped their purview up till now, but and that should have been something they paid attention to all along. But reducing the movie and streaming budgets can also help too. 250 to $300 million budget for every property they make is just not a sustainable number. Not in today's economy, not in today's theatrical releases. Um, Spending between 12 and 25 million per Disney Plus episode for Marvel and Star Wars properties. I'm not sure how they spent that much money on in these individual episodes. It certainly isn't visible in the writing, the acting, the story, the visual effects. This could be the largest money laundering operation ever seen. Um, for those of you who might not know the financials of how cinematic releases work, and from some of the arguments I've had online, many of you don't. Let me explain it. The published production budget is really just a starting point, the first stick in the sand for the overall cost to produce and distribute a movie. Reshoots, distribution costs, marketing, and promotional costs are not included. This can add 2.5 to 3 times the cost of a production. Gross ticket sales do not go to the movie producer outright. So on a $200 million property, if it makes $200 million, you lost $100 million because they're domestically, because that's the split. Gross ticket sales are split between the cinematic box office of who is showing it and the producer who made it. So it's 50-50 generally domestic. Disney has had some better deals here and there, but for the most part, of average, it's 50-50 domestically. Less overseas. It varies by country, but basically looking at about a 60-40 split. And then there's China, which is a whopping 75-25 split because the Communist Chinese Party wants to take its skim off the top. It's made up by numbers there, which used to still make that a profitable market. It's becoming far less so now. And really, movies from U.S. productions are less than 10% of their market now. This means that a movie with a reported budget of, say, 250 million would need to gross between 625 to 750 million just to break even for the studio. Um, Disney's pitiful Marvel projects of late, being capped by the worst of the bunch hitting theaters this weekend, the Marvels, and that's saying something with the collection that includes the Eternals, did not and will not recoup their costs. They've been money losers, with the exception of this year. Guardians 3 made a little bit of money. But I consider that to be an outlier because Guardians has last of the James Gunn properties. It had a built-in audience. It had a star that people liked. It had a legacy of a property that people enjoyed, and that is very different from the rest of the offerings that have come out this year. Pixar has been just a stream of terrible movies for the last 4-5 years. Probably not even worth talking about. They're horrible compared to what it has been. When they got rid of Lasseter, Pixar lost all of its value. Disney Studios live action remakes of classic properties can no longer be counted on to turn a profit since they become more woke. The not so secret queer agenda is on full display in properties geared towards children, and well, they're just plain awful and difficult to watch. Gone are the days where you could pump one of these out and you could guarantee to make make that a billion two out of it. Now they're not even recouping their budgets, and maybe they're recouping their budget once it goes to streaming as well. On the linear television side, ABC has led the way with significant ad revenue losses, but I don't think this can all be blamed on the consumers switching to streaming services or the economy. The slate of terrible programming plays a big part of the ad revenue decline. Add some hit shows along the venue of Friends, Big Bang Theory, or anything worth watching, and advertisers will return along with the audiences. Why on earth the just unwatchable Jimmy Kimmel show was renewed for 3 years is beyond comprehension. It loses millions every year, and Jimmy has become an insufferable bore to watch. Uh, there's also been a lot lower political advertising revenue this quarter, which was unexpected. But when you're running a fossil who doesn't even have any competitors, there's really not a lot to talk about on the air. Disney Plus was held up as a little bit of a winner in this earnings call because it added 7 million new subscribers. That sounds good. But since a significant portion of that number is from free subscriptions given away as part of partnerships with banks, cell phone carriers, and other businesses, they're really adding viewers, not subscribers. Conversion rate of free viewers to paying subscribers is less than 15%. And I think they'd be lucky to get that now. So streaming still resulted in a 400 million loss in the quarter. That's far from the terrifying numbers of last year with losses in the billion five range, but hardly a win to crow about. I don't expect Disney to keep many of these new viewers and convert them to paying subscribers, particularly with the weak slate of terrible offerings like She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Ahsoka, and Secret Invasion. These were very low rated, very little watched. Even the viewership that started, call it relatively high at the beginning, lost more than 50% of its audience by the end, which tells me that people were not invested in them. And if you're not invested in watching these properties through to the end, you're probably not going to plunk down money for a subscription service to get more of that. Uh, Disney will be scrambling to find new ways to pump up membership numbers with more viewers, not subscribers, before the next earnings call. It probably also bears mentioning about the deceptive accounting practices of having Disney Plus buy the rights to air other Disney properties. For example, The Little Mermaid. If you take $100 million and you transfer it from Disney Plus to Disney Studios and report that as earnings, that's deceptive. You really didn't make any money off of that. You're just taking it out of one pocket and putting it in the other and then trying to tell people that I made money. That's not what happened. There's actually a practice that this practice has actually led to several investor fraud suits that are still in progress because this is artificially pumping up their numbers. It's giving them a look of profitability that they don't actually have because there was no new money generated when I just sold it to myself. We'll see how those lawsuits play out and what happens as a result of them and a change in accounting policy. The streaming wars are really just beginning. I don't believe all the current streaming services can survive as they are. People are getting sick of the price increases, the poor quality of shows, the sheer number they're expected to subscribe to. The demand for direct to consumer streaming was misinterpreted based on faulty data provided during the recent lockdowns when people scrambled for things to do at home and things to watch as a diversion. It was overinflated. The potential was overdone, and there's just flat out too many of them. You can't afford to put out poor products when you're trying to compete against each other for the same subscriber base. And that's what Disney has been doing. They emphasize getting more property out instead of more quality property out, and that's a huge mistake. Disney park attendance domestically continues to be an issue. This past summer was the lowest attendance at Disney World in nearly 12 years. 4th of July I was in the park at this time. It was it was not empty, but it was not full. I've been there in years past when the park was twice as full as it was when we were there. You could actually move around. You could find different places to watch fireworks. You could eat without having to have reservations. It was unexpectedly empty. Uh, the revenue, however, is being pumped up by price increases. But this is creating more consumer backlash, and you have to wonder what that tipping point is. What is that breaking point where people are just like, I can get better value for my money elsewhere, be that Universal Studios or just going to do something else. Eventually, people will stop coming if you just price them out of the market. Now, I know the strategy there has been that by pumping up prices, we can keep attendance lower and not pack the parks. That's true, but people who can afford to come to Disney, if the prices are just too astronomically high, aren't going to be the people who come back year over year, month over month, and just want to be there. They're people who have means who can go and travel to anywhere they want and go anywhere they want, and you might not see them again for 5 years. So if you price it all for the very affluent and you take away the ability for the average person to go as their go-to vacation for the year, you're going to see that happen where the parks will empty again, and people will break their habit of going there. And that's not going to be good for the business. Disney's pivot to embracing diversity, equity, inclusion, and LGBTQ ideology, despite customers' clear indications that they don't like it or want it, is really breaking Disney's family oriented brand. Disney has spent 100 years cultivating a generational bond with their fans. My parents took me to the park. I take my child to the park. She'll take her children someday to the park. That was what they managed to have, and they created a generational brand unlike any other company that's ever existed, frankly. And that's getting broken, and it's getting broken fast if it's not already there at its breaking point. Um, the Reimagine Tomorrow program has been an unmitigated disaster for them, uh, and their not so secret queer agenda has damaged not only their movie and television properties, but also in the parks too. Nobody wants to go and spend an enormous amount of money on the bippity boppity boo boutique and find some dude in a dress and a mustache telling you that he's your fairy godmother. People will simply turn away from that. Parents are thinking twice about trusting Disney with their content and messaging that they're trying to pass on to their children. You can no longer safely put your child in front of a Disney property and rely on the fact that they're getting a wholesome message and a family friendly message, because there are too many activists in the company trying to make sure that they spread their message into everything Disney does, and that is causing brand damage that may never be repaired, and certainly needs to be addressed. Disney may not be the juggernaut it once was, but it still has a deep catalog of IP. Tarnished as they may be, Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars has reached critical mass of apathy. People just don't care anymore. It used to be that you'd still see people arguing online about this wasn't good, that wasn't good. Why is this property bad? Why is this show bad? Now they're just quiet because they don't care. They've checked out. Uh, and that is the worst thing that can happen. At least when they were talking and upset, they were still talking about your property. They still had hope. They still watched the hope the next thing was going to be better, and it's not getting better. And so they've just gone away. How to get them back? I'm not even sure that's possible in the short term. These brands don't need more movies and shows, but they need far less. Disney used to be very successful using the vault concept. Animated properties would go into the vault and weren't available for buying or viewing, and they left them there to build up interest and demand. So when they released them from the vault, there was a huge pent up demand, and people bought the DVDs, they bought the VHS tapes, and it was a very successful way of managing their property. Marvel and Lucasfilm needs to go into the vault for a good long while. Um, Let it sit there, let people forget about all the things that have happened, and then pull it out, press the reset button, and start over. Um, Starting over means giving the properties their due rights. Uh, you need to not put the JV team in on these properties. The JV squad directors, inexperienced writers who've done little more than documentaries or low budget horror films, should not be making $300 million Marvel or Lucasfilm products. They don't have the experience. They don't have the quality. They're just not seasoned for it. Disney has chased a lot of its creatives out the door and replaced them with activists who, frankly, they're more interested in self-insertions or more interested in pushing agendas than they are about telling a story, even if they were capable of telling a story. You need to try to win these creators back, and I don't think in the short term it's going to be possible. Many of them are shying away from even wanting to do work with Disney anymore because they know it's going to be a disaster. It's not going to be fun. There'll be too much interference from corporate, and they'll find other places to go work. And that's really sad. But perhaps if you let them sit in the vault for a while, come back out and get a restart again, hire competent people, maybe you can save these IPs, save these products. I hope they do. They're things that I've enjoyed my whole life, and I don't want to see them just circle the drain and disappear forever. But even putting out less with what you perceive as being more quality, but doing it with the same people who's producing it now, you're not going to get more quality. You're just going to get more junk, and you're just going to further damage the brand. It needs to sit and age for a while and then bring it back out. Anyway, that's my take on it. If you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments. I do read them all and reply to many. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. If you didn't like this video, thank you for watching through to the end. I do appreciate you all. That's all I have for now. You do take care. I'll be back real soon with another video. Bye for now.